Hey everybody out there on social media, my name is Matthew Johnson and welcome to Steps to Freedom. We are still currently in our 12-week series on how to go through the 12 steps, and today we're going to be looking at and breaking down step 2 as well as looking at and discussing the principle attached to step 2. So if you do not have yourself a big book or a basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous, I highly suggest that you put this video on pause, that you go get yourself a copy right now, get yourself some highlighter, pens, whatever you need to write this stuff down with. This is a wonderful way to go through the 12 steps. It says in the literature that our way of living has its advantages for all, and I truly believe that. You do not have to have an addiction to go through these 12 steps. This will treat spiritual malady, and spiritual malady is spiritual sickness that every single person suffers from, that deals with it in their own way. Just the difference is, for an addict or alcoholic, we drink or use over it, and to drink or to use is to die. So to go into my next question, if you wouldn't mind, if you could please like, subscribe, and share this video with as many family and friends as possible, people in recovery or not in recovery. That would be greatly appreciated. My whole goal, my whole mission is to further the message of recovery, the message of Jesus and Christianity. And if you are wondering why I just mentioned Jesus and Christianity on a recovery channel, that's because I am a Christian and I am not ashamed of saying I'm a believer in Jesus. I am going to be talking about God, spiritual terms, recovery, Jesus. So please, I hope that that doesn't shut you off from this channel. I hope you're still watching this video and your heart hasn't been hardened to the point where you're so closed-minded that you reject the message of recovery in the gospel. I'll do my best to respect your higher power. If you could do the same with me, I'll try not to force it because that's not my whole objective here, is not to force anything. I do not want to force Christianity or even recovery on people who do not want it. This is a program for people who want it, not that need it. So, just to throw out there, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a spiritual guru, I'm not affiliated or connected to Alcoholics Anonymous or any 12-step fellowship. I don't get paid for this. I'm not asking for your money or donations. I'm doing this out of my own resources and sacrificing my own time because this is the way I give back. I love sponsoring. I love doing 12-step work. I've been blessed with the ability to share not just the gospel, but the message of recovery, how to go through these 12 steps, and how selfish of me if I don't give back. So that's enough disclaimers. I want to try to shorten and lessen that with each video. This is going to be a very simple video. It shouldn't be too long. So if you can open up to page 59 while I introduce myself. My name is Matthew Johnson, and I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. And on page 59, we are going to go to the page of the 12 steps, and we are going to discuss the second step. You can see it right there on the page. And I like to start out with my videos, for those who haven't seen it, with reading the step and then reading the principle that's attached to that step. Kind of gives a good foundation, groundwork of what we're going to be discussing and going into. So it says, the second step is, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I love the first word, came. Came to believe. That's implying that this is a lifetime process, that sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. I know I wasn't a believer in Jesus overnight. I didn't even necessarily take fully to the program of recovery. I had so many relapses after even working the 12 steps because my heart really wasn't in it. I didn't have that gift of desperation. So this is a lifetime process. It never stops. Just like God, you can never limit or define God. Like he is always the same. I mean, you can know who he is if you read the Bible and you read, the book of recovery. I guess you would say you can get a glimpse of who he is, and he always stays the same. So came to believe is a process. Um, the cool thing is you don't even have to believe right now. It's just the willingness to believe, and a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. So right there, it talks about restoring us to sanity. And so I know when I first heard that, I'm like, okay, well, it's going to restore people that are schizophrenic, normal, or, it's talking about the mental obsession, this delusion or illusion that I have for drinking and drugs or whatever the case may be for you. Just substitute if you're dealing with something that's different than that. But it removes that mental obsession so I don't put a drink and drug in my body. That's what it means to restore from sanity. If someone had schizophrenia or some other mental illness, it's not necessarily going to remove that, even though it definitely can help. And I've seen people that have had mental illness dramatically, get well, and some even come off medication. I'm not saying to get off medication. I'm not a doctor, another disclaimer. But I am saying if you work these 12 steps and the rest of the program, of these 12-step fellowships, that people improve dramatically. Even people without addictions find themselves a lot more happier and a peace of mind. So with that being said, that's the sanity they're talking about. And so I also want to mention the principle attached to that step is going to be hope, right? So I have hope that I'm going to be restored to sanity, and whatever powers out there is going to work in my life and keep me sober and improve my spiritual condition through this lifetime process. So with that being said, if you want to open up your book to page 44, we're going to be reading pages 44 and 45. Now this is in chapter 4, We Agnostics, and this is actually where step 2 starts. So you can write step 2 right at the top of your book, and we're just going to read a couple pages, and I'll probably be breaking it down as we go along. So it says, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. And if that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So if we go back up to the top, it says, we hope you've learned something of alcoholism, that if you do not have step 1 down to a T, you should not move on to step 2. You have to fully understand the principle of honesty, getting honest with yourself, God, and everyone around you, especially your sponsor, and understanding that, okay, do I have this disease, this spiritual malady, mental obsession, and this allergy, this phenomena of craving? And once you fully understand that, and you understand fully that you cannot drink or drug or have any reservations that you want to drink or use in the future, that you think you could pull it off, then you're ready for step 2. And so then it goes on to say, and basically just to point out, it breaks down step 1 so easy. It says, you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking or using, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic or a drug addict. So it talks about the mental obsession and the allergy within that little sentence right there. That's how easy it is to take someone through the first step. But I like to break it down and go even deeper so you fully understand the disease concepts instead of doing it just like that. But then it talks about you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And so that's an awesome promise that you will conquer the disease of addiction if you do what the program says, right? So then it goes on to say, to one who feels he's an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic or drug addict of the hopeless variety. To be doomed an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. So I didn't want that decision. I did not want to be a Christian. I did not want to have my higher power be Jesus. It just kind of went that way. I didn't want to do these 12 steps. I didn't want to be in the room of AA, of NA, of any A. But I had to make a decision. Are you going to go on to the bitter end and continue the way your life's going? Or are you going to submit to these 12-step fellowships and beyond and let God save you? And so I believe, and this is my personal opinion, feel free to disregard, but I believe that people with alcoholism and drug addiction and things like that are chosen people from God. That there's some kind of special anointing. And I know that might sound crazy, and especially if you're in addiction and never experienced a spiritual experience like I have. But looking back on it, I am so thankful for my drug addiction and alcoholism, and that it gave me a whole new life. And it is a new high that is unexplainable. God is just amazing. And the programs that have came out of this book and all the other ones are just amazing as well. Every day, I just keep getting more spiritually fit. I just keep receiving more peace and more blessings. And God gives me not just things I need, but want as well, as long as my will lines up with His. Like, it's just infinite, So it is not always an easy choice. A lot of people sadly go on to the bitter end because of their pride and ego, and they just suffer and they just don't get the program, or they refuse to get it. And the majority refuse. They're like, I don't want to be in AA or any 12-step fellowship. I don't want to be a Christian. I don't want to have to pray and meditate and go to meetings every day. And sadly, instead of that, they go to their dope dealer every day and sell other items every day and live in rundown motels and rehabs and institutions and do long stints in prison. A lot of people do. But they could avoid all that if they just surrendered. So it blows my mind how far gone I was and couldn't see the truth. So hopefully it won't be that way with you. Then it goes on to say on page 44 still, but it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were exactly of that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics or drug addicts. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual base of life or else. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you, but cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostic. Our experience shows that you need not to be disconcerted. So it talks about half our original fellowship were exactly of that type. Well, if you see my prior videos, it talks about the first 100. They are the first 100 men and women who wrote this book, who did all the trials and experiences, the relapse. They got this thing down to a T for us, so we could just simply follow the directions and have that spiritual experience. But half of them were atheist and agnostic. So I'm applying, and this is my own personal belief, that the other half is probably Christian, or we're part of Catholicism, Catholics, or something like that, that believed. So then it goes on, if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism or drug addiction, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral, we could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. So no matter how bad I wanted to, stay sober and be moral, and take the old ladies across the street, or, just being polite and positive, wasn't enough to keep me sober. I needed more power because I didn't have any power. And that's where it goes on. It says, lack of power was our dilemma. We're on page 45. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? So if it's talking about lack of power, right? And I am a chronic relapser. I destroy everything I touch. I'm in jails, institutions. I can't keep a job. I'm actually depleting other people's resources. Then I'm a negative power. And if all human aid has failed me, all these doctors and medications and my friends and children, I can't stay sober for them or even myself, that means they just have no power. So I'm negative power, they have no power. So how am I supposed to get connected with a power greater than myself? Because I have to have some kind of power. And there's nothing here on this earth that can save me because it's in another dimension or another realm, the spiritual realm. So it says, well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic or drug addict problems and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had nearly evaded or entirely ignored. So a lot of people might have a problem with God, especially when you open this book and you talk about God. If the person that you're working with or that you're watching this video and you're listening to me right now have a problem with God and you're like, you know what, I don't want to go through with it, you do not even have to believe right now. You just have to have the willingness to believe. And I promise you, if you go through the rest of this process with these steps, that you will have some kind of belief in a power greater than yourself. I'll throw out a little disclaimer and say I'm 99.9% sure, but everyone I've worked with, I've seen people that have been atheists, and those people, I'll say one person actually, has actually came to church with me and does believe in something, but it's not Jesus or Christianity, and that's okay. They have this saying that AA will save your butt, but Jesus will save your soul. So I'm cool with just doing my part and bringing people into AA and saving their butt, to help them stay sober. Hopefully, I get to take them to the next step and get them evolved into Christianity, into Jesus, true Christianity, not this Catholicism, real relationship with Jesus, and not this other garbage that is out there. So with that being said, let's go to page 46. All right. And we're going to start in the middle of the page. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but I just want to get the meat and potatoes out of everything and get straight to the point. We're going to be looking at the middle of page on 46, and it says, yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you, we found as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. So all you have to do is not be so prideful, lay aside your prejudice, and just express even a willingness. And I promise you, you will get results. To much our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another man's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps, the 12 steps. We found, or actually steps 3 through 12. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. So in that whole paragraph, you can have whatever conception of God you want. Okay, but I highly suggest you'll hear people in these 12-step fellowships say, oh, you can make your higher power a doorknob or some kind of ridiculous thing like that. I'm gonna suggest that you don't do that and stick with something like Mother Nature or science, mathematics, the universe, anything besides things like that. Because what if I come up and I have a screwdriver and I just unscrew your doorknob and take it? Like, it's something that is really not that unexplainable. I can kind of like, so you need to get with something that's more of like a phenomena, unexplainable, something that is bigger than you, that has more power. Because remember, if I'm negative power, right, and other humans have power, I mean, no power, or power they can't help me with, then I need to get something that's more power. So it has to be something that trumps all them. Pretty sure a doorknob or something like that is not going to trump people like that. I have a better chance of a doctor actually helping me than a doorknob. You know. So with that being said, then it goes on to say, "Who earnestly seek Him." Right? He talks about seeking all over in that page, and that just reminds me of an awesome Bible verse, or a couple Bible verses. That's in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. I think it goes until like verse 9 or 10. Actually, I would like to read it. So if you do not mind, I'm actually using the Life Recovery Bible. Even though it's not King James, this is the NLT. I highly suggest using like King James and things like that. They're more accurate. I do love the King James Bible, but for this case, I've been reading the Life Recovery Bible. It has the 12 steps in there. So there's other versions of the Bible. They're great if you can understand it. A lot more easier to kind of get you going, a little starter. But I eventually suggest moving to the King James. So it goes on to say in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, "Keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. Everyone who seeks finds. And to everyone who knocks, the door will be open. You parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, do you give them a stone instead? Or if they ask for a fish, do you give them a snake? Of course not. So if you sinful people know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask Him?" Right? So it's also applying that you must be in the same family. And that goes on outside of the recovery realm, so I'm not going to get too far into it, but I'm going to be making other videos that are going to be breaking that stuff down and staying in the context, because a lot of people will take these Bible verses and take it out of context. So I don't want to go there and scare all the people who are against the Bible away. I want to stick to the recovery, because it's my whole job to give you the message of recovery separate to the Bible, even though I love combining them. So there's a little, little journey for you to discover where some of this stuff comes out of the Bible into the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then it goes on to say on to page 47, "When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies to other spiritual expressions, which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice," again it talks about prejudice, "you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this is all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. Then it's going to be going on to the step 2 question. So the next paragraph, it asks a very simple question. This is actually the only question you need to ask a sponsee if you really wanted to do step 2. And it says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? So that's how simple this is. If you don't believe, are you willing to? And if you do believe, are you willing to go through the rest of this process? I mean, it's a win-win. So if you understand the disease of addiction, you have this disease, then are you willing to even believe in something greater than yourself? It don't have to be Jesus. It don't have to be any religion. Just something spiritual in nature that's unexplainable, that can't be limited. And then if you go through that process, then you can just go right into step 3. And we're going to do that video next week, so stay tuned for that. But that's how simple this is. And then it goes on to say, as soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is well on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon the simple cornerstone, a wonderful, effective spiritual structure can be built. So all through the book, it gives, like in step 1, the foundation. We all have this common peril. We put down the foundation of understanding this disease. Do I have it? And kind of hit all the little questions we need to there. And that gives the good foundation. And then it talks about a cornerstone. And for people who don't know Freemason terms, not the secret society, but real Freemason block layer terms, a cornerstone is the first stone that is laid after the foundation is built to build whatever structure is going to be established in that foundation, on that foundation. So that's why it says cornerstone. Later on in step 3, it's going to talk about the arch with the keystone, and I'll explain that in that video when we get to it. So just pay attention as you go through the book. You're going to hear these certain things, these Freemasonry terms, and it's talking about building our temple, building, our bodies, so that way God can come dwell inside of us, right? Because we want to be a vessel for God to use so we can carry the message and stay sober and help others stay sober. So then it goes on to say, that was great news for us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Not very hard. We don't have to be envious of anybody's recovery or sobriety. We can do, we have the same opportunities and resources that everyone else has. The only difference is the heart, and you'll hear me say this all the time. Whatever happens in the physical realm happens in the spiritual realm. So, you heard Jesus talk about parables. It simplifies everything. You have everything at your disposal. You can do it. It just depends if your heart's in the right place. So next we're going to go on to, actually, I'm going to stop there because if you look, it has a little asterisk right here after that paragraph was ended, where it says spiritual structure can be built. And it actually says, go see the spiritual experience 2 and the appendix 2. So that's on page 567. And I really want to discuss that because I think it's really important to get a good picture of what a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening is. And this is where I got all my dialect from. This is according to the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, what a spiritual experience means. So I'm just going to read it again. It's in Spiritual Experience 2, and that's on page 567. It says the terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book. Upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism or drug addiction has manifested itself among us in different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not in our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics or drug addicts have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics and drug addicts, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James called the educational variety. That's actually a book, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life. That such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With a few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unexpected inner source which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerant or belligerent denial. I'm sorry if I'm saying that word wrong. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. And then it goes on, giving a quote from Herbert Spencer. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is concept prior to investigation. So that is a lot of information to kind of soak up, but to sum it all up, and you'll hear me say this all the time, a spiritual experience leads to a spiritual awakening. And a spiritual awakening is a change of personality. So brand new emotions, thoughts, actions, ideas, feelings, everything are totally brand new. I've done a 180 from the person I used to be. And that can only be brought on through a spiritual method like the 12 steps. And that's why you hear me all the time saying, about the 12 steps and work the 12 steps and always promoting the 12 steps, because that is the program of recovery. I have it on the board back here for a reason. You do the 12 steps and doing all this other stuff, and you have these spiritual experiences, and it keeps you in a safe zone where you can stay sober and carry the message of God of recovery. So I urge you, if you haven't done these steps, do them with me on this video. I'm not saying that I'm your permanent sponsor, but I could be your temporary sponsor and give you a good footing on how these steps should be worked. So that way, if you get a sponsor and he doesn't follow the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous, if that's the route you're going with, then you could be like, well, look at these videos. It doesn't say this in there. And you're having me do some weird stuff because there are sponsors out there who shouldn't be qualified to sponsor and do. And if you don't know what to look for, or what this book says, you could be misled, just like what happens in the church. So that's another reason I'm making these videos. But to get back on track, back on topic, next we're going to go to page 53. And I'm about done, but I just wanted to hit a couple of these little things out here. On 53, they're really short. It's the middle paragraph right here. It just says on page 53, when we became alcoholics or drug addicts, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What is our choice to be? So if you replace God with recovery, with Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever 12-step fellowship, you're either all into that, you're either all into going to meetings, to working these steps, to getting commitments, to chairing meetings, making coffee, to changing your old life for a new life. All right. If that goes outside into other religious organizations or whatever, then that definitely helps it. I know for me, my Christian roots really, accelerated my recovery. It was like putting kerosene on fire. It just made everything go up a lot higher. But you cannot postpone or evade, right? So if you put off the rest of these steps, you're postponing or evading. And that, for an alcoholic or drug addict or anyone with whatever disease you might be or addiction you might be facing, can cause you to go back to a relapse. We're like ticking time bombs. You never know when this mental obsession is going to go off. And for me, I need to be spiritually fit enough to have a relationship and be connected to God enough so he can defend me. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but the closer you get to God, to the truth, the more you can see, because you're in the light and you can see how dark it was where you were and how God lets you see through a whole new pair of glasses. And I actually want to use this description real quick. I know I said I was going to make this a short video, so I want to try to stay true to my word, but I just feel God leading me to say this. Look at this whole thing of believing in a higher power. Look at it as like spiritual Wi-Fi. And I'm probably going to use this in like step 3 or step 4 as well. But look at it like spiritual Wi-Fi. You cannot see it. Just like radio waves and television waves and the internet, you cannot see it. But you know it's there. How? Because of the fruit it produces. You go and turn on the internet, it's on there. You see it works. If it never came on, you would be like, that never worked. TV, you go, you turn it on, you get picture. So you cannot see these radio waves or television waves or Wi-Fi signals, but they exist because of the fruit it produces. And that's the same thing in the spiritual realm. You hear me say, whatever happens in the physical happens in the spiritual. So when you're in the spiritual realm, the more you get these bars connected, the better reception, the better connection to the internet, to God, that you have. And so if I'm coming in with no bars and I'm not connected, I'm exposed to the dangers of relapse and of these things out there trying to infiltrate and attack me. Rather, if you believe in demons or not, it's a whole nother story. But when I work these steps and I work the rest of the program that's outlined behind me, that all of a sudden those bars start going up and I start becoming more spiritually fit and I start having more peace and serenity and selflessness and humility, and all of a sudden my bars are all the way up there and that disease cannot attack me. It goes in remission and I become recovered, and it cannot attack me. It can try to tempt me, but it can't attack me and possess me and put me on autopilot so I go and drink a drug or do whatever. And that's the amazing blessing, but I have to be connected. I have to have that connection, and if I don't, I'm exposed. And the things that take me away from God, these character defects, those are the things that weaken my signal. Picture character defects as big old blocks, cement blocks. And every time I do something like lie, steal, cheat, manipulate, pride, ego, jealousy, hate, resentment, or more blocks, more character defects that build around me. And actually, I build myself into a prison without even realizing it. And then no reception can get through. God cannot get through because of all my character defects are blocking him. And unfortunately, he has to let me, because he's such a loving and awesome father, he has to let me make my own choices because he gave me free will. And unfortunately, those choices lead me back to a drink or drug, and could be even death, and definitely an institution for me. And then hopefully I'll have another recovery in me. But you always hear this in the rooms. You always have another relapse, but you might not always have another recovery. So I urge you, get with someone that's qualified to work through these steps and start doing that, clear away that connection that once was there, or the character defects that are there, so free up that connection so you can be spiritually fit again, and stay sober. So hopefully that made sense. I'm actually recording this video at 11:30 at night on a Friday night, because the video I recorded prior to this a couple days ago didn't feel right. And that was the first time I ever had that happen. And I felt God put it on my heart saying to record another video. And so I prayed about it, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And so this is the video coming out. But that's the stuff I do. I sacrifice my time and my sleep cycle. I gotta be up at 5 in the morning, but I believe I was called by God to redo this video to make sure it's released at the proper time. And hey, I used to stay up for weeks on end on meth binges, and be homeless, wandering the streets of drug-induced psychosis. Um, I'm pretty sure I can be okay sober with only 4 hours of sleep or so. So with that being said, let's just jump into one of the last things on page 54. And this is going to be short and sweet. Right down here, there's this one little sentence. Imagine life without faith. And when I first heard that, this has always stuck out with me. And all through my life, I had no problem having faith in the physical realm for these worldly things. In the sense of get into a car, start the car. 9 times out of 10, unless it's a broke down car, you have faith it's going to start. Or even a better one. I don't wake up in the morning thinking that gravity is going to push me to the ground. I don't wake up in the morning thinking there's going to be no oxygen, because I've done it so much that it's just natural. And that's this whole process of step 2 and the rest of these steps, is that it becomes natural. You even have to think about it. It is just automatically there in the psyche. It gets built into your mind and your body, as well as the spiritual, because whatever happens in the physical happens in the spiritual. And so imagine life without faith. I had no problem having faith in all these other little things, but I did not have faith that God was going to come through every time. I didn't have faith if I was going to give up the drugs and alcohol and surrender to the program of recovery, that God would take care of me. And now I'm on such a good footing, which I'm still just a baby in this thing. I'm still just doing it one day at a time. But I have enough little few 24 hours where I can actually have a reliance upon God and be like, God, I know I'm in fear right now, but I know you got me, because I believe. And that's all I have to do, is have the willingness to believe. And he will take you places that are just amazing, spiritually. Not just physically, but spiritually. The freedom that I have never felt before until really working this program, and having my heart all in it, is just amazing. So just imagine life without faith. It would be pretty boring, and you got to have that faith, okay? And it takes some time, but I promise you, if you just do what this book says, follow these steps, that you'll have that spiritual experience that I've had, and hundreds, thousands, millions of people have had. So with that being said, I urge you, I pray for you, get into a 12-step fellowship, work these steps. If you want to contact me, you can find me at steps2freedom7@gmail.com or find us on our Facebook page. I say us because I'm including you guys. This is your channel, your Facebook pages, your email. If you have any questions or you want to just say some stuff that maybe debates, that I should or shouldn't do, or any suggestions of things you would like me to put on this channel, please send them out to me. I'm also looking for testimony videos. I have a few people working on them, so I hope that some real Christians or real people in recovery, even if you're not Christian, will send in videos that I can put out once a week or so to show people this does work. God can transform your life. I love this shirt I wear. I got a whole bunch of these shirts, and it says, God is dope. And it's so funny because when I was in active addiction, it was dope is God. Dope was God. And now God is dope, man. He is called the Most High for a reason. I truly believe that, even though I'm taking that out of context probably. He's just amazing. So I've blabbed enough. If you can, please like, subscribe, share. Hopefully this video touched somebody and really just if I can just help one person, that's all I need. So if no one told you today that they love you, just know that Jesus does, and so do I. God bless everyone.